CD009 transmission for our CD-PRO kit. You're gonna need some tools. You're gonna need a cutoff disc, 4.5 inch or 5 inch. Use a cordless one, and you're gonna need a Sawzall with some decent blades. Use Renegades, they're like $1 each. A marker, you get a guide for cutting your input shaft, and a guide for cutting or for marking the transmission where to cut. We're gonna start by removing the stock shifter housing and all the stuff that's in the way, like the slave cylinder. So you're gonna need a 12mm wrench or socket, and you have to take off the shifter assembly here. So you need a pin punch and a hammer. So before you start your cut, you want to plug this hole. This is actually a vent. So you're gonna pull this off and grab a vacuum cap or a piece of tape and cover that before you start cutting, because you don't want to get shavings inside. Okay, so this part is gonna be in your way for cutting and just generally putting it in the car. So we actually have to cut this part off as well. All right, so we've included a 1/8 inch spacer for you to draw your line, because your cut is going to be 1/8 of an inch behind the last rib. Just continue around the transmission, keeping your marker against the spacer and your spacer against the rib. So when you get to the bottom here, it's a little crazy, so you have to just keep your spacer against all these little nooks and crannies, just so you can get your line nice and even. Start by cutting into these little ribs so that we get a nice spot for our Sawzall to sit in. So just grab a 2x4. I use a floor mat just to kind of hold it in place when you're spinning it around. And just kind of look down the blade and keep it right on the line. It's pretty easy to do. You don't have to go very deep. Bearing plate is very close to this edge, so you don't want to cut straight through and into the transmission. When you finish most of your cut on the outside, you're probably left with a few of the ribs. They do go a little bit deeper. You don't have to cut all the way through them. You will want to cut into them though. Just use a light and you can kind of see. So this bottom part here is where I said to be careful, because this is extremely close and you don't want to cut into the actual transmission housing. All right, so when you're done, you'll be left with little nugs like this. So you want to take your flapper disc and just kind of grind them flush with the edge, just so that when you put your bell housing on, it's not going to hang up. It has to be completely flat. So you're going to take your cutting template, cutting guide. All right, so it's cutting guide. You take this guide, put this on the. Okay, ready? Okay, you're going to take your cutting guide, slide it over the input shaft nub, and this is where you're going to cut. It helps if you have a friend to spin the drive shaft as you cut, so you get a nice straight cut. And switch to your flapper disc, and he's going to spin it as I grind a nice chamfer into the end. So the next step is to remove the existing bearing cover once you have all the bolts out. You're going to install the new seal and gasket onto your CD-PRO bell housing, and then reinstall it on there. You'd use a bushing driver or a socket. We also conveniently include the input shaft bearing spacers. They changed the bearing sizes throughout the life of this transmission. The early ones are 100mm and they don't require a spacer. And in sometime in 05 they changed to 95, which would be the blue spacer. And then later on they changed to a 90mm, which is the red spacer. It's pretty easy to to see if you need one or not. You basically hold that up, and if it goes on, you need it. If it doesn't, you don't need it. Good to note that there are actually 4 bolts that are different. The 4 lower ones are actually in fluid, so you do need to seal them with RTV when you put them back in. And they do get torqued to 13 foot-pounds. Hope that was helpful. That's how you cut the transmission for the installation of our CD-PRO Bellhousing. Hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to call or email us. Make sure that you only have the ribs left. You can just take it and stupid thing out.